Radio was the first social network sharing information, telling stories and building communities over the airwaves. Now, stations are using social media to deepen audience relationships. Broadcasters are wooing audiences across the social media platforms and providing content on multiple mobile and stationary smart devices. Though the digital technology has shaken the traditional structures in the broadcasting industry, the future will bring in more dramatic changes and many new types of services on the horizon. This morning, we look at the waves being made in the digitalization of radio broadcasting with Ronel Legranse, representative from Communications Regulatory Authority of Namibia. Good morning, ma'am. It's such a pleasure to have you with us.
Good morning very much. Thank you for inviting us. It is our sincere pleasure to be with NBC this morning on World Radio Day.
Oh, wow. Well, please talk to us about the digitalization of radio broadcasting, basically just what it entails with a key focus on the Namibian context.
Okay. Radio has a very long history in Namibia. To date, we have seen with analog broadcasting is that the broadcasters each have their own station and their own transmitter. Now, when we move to digital radio, we're going to see a collaborative environment where you will have content providers focusing on quality content. You will have the producers, you will have a multiplex operator and a signal distributor, which is very similar to digital terrestrial television that we see now. The greatest change we're going to see is that the technologies we are looking at will allow for 4 to 12 radio stations to be broadcasted via a single transmitter by means of a multiplex. It will also therefore take broadcasting to the next stage, because not only will you have your normal radio programs, you will be able to balance your content with text and data to enter the infotainment era like we do on social media and the other platforms. So it's a great opportunity for Namibia to move to digital radio and really embrace the digital era. And very importantly, it will allow for, in cases like we have now with flooding warnings, that the radio broadcasters can provide these messages both in text and in voice, reaching a much wider audience.
Now, what mechanisms or system has CRAN put in place to enable this transition into the digital radio?
It has been quite some time that we have been busy with this. In fact, when we started with digital television, since Namibia signed the GEO6 agreement, in 2013, we already put the regulatory framework in place to allow for signal distributions and multiplexes. We have now embraced digital television, and in the next move was then radio. So the authority already released spectrum in 2019 for digital radio. Both technologies, DAB as well as DRM, to allow the business sector to choose technology which they will prefer. There is advantages between the two technologies, in that DAB will allow for 12 channels on one frequency, while DRM will be able to accommodate 4. And then you've got good coverage reach, and the plan we have put forward will provide coverage to 84% plus of the population currently. So we're eagerly awaiting for applications at this stage.
In your opinion, ma'am, how are local radio stations faring with regards to keeping up with the times and strides of the digital spaces?
I think the community radios finds it very hard at this stage because funding has dried up with COVID and in the economics, so they really find it hard to survive. The regulator tries to accommodate them, giving them more time to come off the ground or to get their finances in order. And then because of social media and the other platforms that also now takes up advertising, broadcasters live off advertising. So we see that profitability is a challenge for radio broadcasters at this stage.
Let's talk about how technology is fast evolving and radio is accessible on devices such as computers, mobile devices, handsets, or even tablets. How does this influence the schedules and competition amongst broadcasters?
Many of our broadcasters actually is also available via the internet. The advantage to that is that it has increased their reach, not also outside the borders of Namibia, which means previously where they only had a listener audience within Namibia, they also now have listeners outside of Namibia. So in one stage, it has created an opportunity for them. On the other side, it is a competition for them. Because now in terms of content, you have to be the more immediate in what you offer. Because especially with social media, the consumer wants instant gratification. And you want to listen to what you want at when you want to eat. So that is a challenge for them. But there is some sort of balance between the mediums. And that is why a movement to more digital radio away from analog is essential.
Do you think Namibians are taking advantage of the opportunities presented by the digitalization of radio?
Not to date. It seems a little bit hesitant. We will also see that because there is, of course, capital involved. We also see that they still clinging to the old technology because but your transmitters are getting old, and any equipment that gets old also affects quality because you can find difficult to find spare parts and so forth for repairs. So we see some hesitancy. And for that reason, the regulator has not done enforced migration to digital radio. We have kept the FM band intact so that it can be at the, give the market time to move to digital radio and embrace these new technologies. Of course, it's also important that the rest of SADC moves. SADC has adopted a SADC framework for digital broadcasting because you need end-user equipment. And you need car radios, but most cars that we see coming in have the capability to switch between a digital radio as well as FM radio. So it's a slow process, but we're very eager to see the first opportunist or entrepreneur taking on digital radio.
Now, as we round up our conversation, ma'am, perhaps you can just talk to us about some of the developments in the pipeline from CRAN side.
From CRAN side, this year is the year we review our spectrum strategy. The last one we've published in 2018, so we will shortly start public consultation on that. Specifically, we will also release more frequencies for FM radio as we have concluded the coordination process with our neighbours. Because when you have frequency close to the borders, or in the border areas, we have to liaise with Botswana, Angola, South Africa, and the likes to make sure that we do not interfere with each other, because we're using the same spectrum resource. So we have concluded that process actually only last week, and now we're looking forward also to make those frequencies available to the public, but we will set out the timelines in the forthcoming strategy.
Ma'am, as we commemorate World Radio Day today, please share your final remarks.
I think, and for me it's very important, why radio is so important, even during the pandemic. This was the only means of communication for many people. It was the only source of companionship and the only source of information. Radio will stay for a long time. Unlike other technologies, it will not disappear that quickly because of the reach. And of course, the advantage that you can listen to the radio in your own vernacular.
Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
And for assuring us that radio will be around for a long time.
No, it certainly will. Thank you very much.
Well, that was Ronelle Legrandse, representative from Communications Regulatory Authority of Namibia. We'll be back with the next interview shortly. Stay with us.